What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this video, billionaires are pulling money directly out of your bank account, and you don't even know it's happening? I'm not talking about taxes. I'm not talking about inflation. I'm talking about a calculated, systematic extraction of wealth that happens every single month while you're too busy working to notice. And I ran the numbers. The average American household is quietly handing over $2,847 every month to the ultra-rich. And here's the thing. Most people have no idea it's even happening. Look, I know that sounds dramatic, but stick with me for the next few minutes because I'm going to show you exactly where your money is going, who's taking it, and why the system is designed to make sure you never question it. By the end of this video, you're going to see your rent payment, your mortgage, your student loans, even your retirement savings in a completely different light. And honestly, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So here's how this whole thing works. The rich don't work the way we do. They don't trade hours for dollars. They don't clock in. They don't worry about getting fired. Instead, they own things, and those things generate income while they sleep. We call this passive income, but that's just a polite way of saying they collect rent on your life. They own the roof over your head. They own the companies whose stocks sit in your 401k. They own the banks that hold your mortgage. And every month, like clockwork, you pay them. Now, let me break down that $2,800 I mentioned earlier because this isn't some conspiracy theory. This is math. Let's start with housing because that's the biggest one. The average American household spends about $1,300 a month on rent or mortgage interest. Notice I said interest, not the actual home. That interest goes straight into the pockets of landlords, banks, and real estate investors. You're not building wealth. You're paying someone else's mortgage. You're funding their retirement. And if you think owning a home gets you out of this game, think again. Even homeowners are paying interest to banks, property taxes to governments, and insurance to corporations. The house might have your name on it, but you're still renting it from the system. Next up, debt, student loans, credit cards, car payments. The average household pays around $500 a month just in interest on various debts. Not paying down what they owe, just interest. That money flows directly to banks and financial institutions. And here's the kicker. Those institutions are owned by who? The ultra-wealthy. The top 1% owns 31% of all wealth in this country. And a huge chunk of that wealth comes from lending you money and then collecting interest forever. But wait, it gets better. Let's talk about investments. You've got a 401k, right? Maybe some stocks. You think you're building wealth, and technically you are. But guess who's skimming off the top? Fund managers, financial advisors, hedge funds. They charge fees, management costs, transaction fees. Over a lifetime, these fees can eat up hundreds of thousands of dollars from your retirement savings. And who owns those firms? You guessed it, billionaires. Now let's add in the invisible stuff, the things you don't even think about. Every time you buy something, a chunk of that price goes to paying off corporate debt, shareholder dividends, and executive bonuses. When you fill up your gas tank, a portion goes to oil executives. When you buy groceries, part of it funds stock buybacks that enrich investors. When you pay your phone bill, you're padding the portfolios of telecom shareholders. It's everywhere. Every single transaction you make funnels money upward. And then there's the really sneaky part. Inflation. When the government prints money, or when the Federal Reserve drops interest rates to keep the economy humming, who benefits most? Not you. It's the people who own assets. Real estate, stocks, businesses. Their wealth inflates while your paycheck stays flat. Between 2020 and 2023, billionaires saw their combined wealth surge by over $2 trillion. $2 trillion. That's a 70% increase in 3 years. Meanwhile, regular folks saw their savings eroded by rising costs and stagnant wages. That's not luck. That's design. Here's where it gets really wild. The bottom 50% of Americans, that's over 160 million people, own just 2.5% of the country's wealth. Meanwhile, the top 10% owns 2/3, and the top 1%, They own almost as much as the entire bottom 90% combined. This isn't a wealth gap, it's a wealth canyon. And it's getting wider every single day. So how did we get here? Let's rewind. Back in the 1960s, wealth inequality existed, but it wasn't this extreme. The average CEO made about 20 times what their workers made. Today, that ratio is over 300 to 1. What changed? Policy. Tax cuts for the wealthy, deregulation of Wall Street, the gutting of labor protections, the rise of shareholder capitalism, where companies exist solely to enrich investors, not to pay workers or serve communities. Every policy shift over the past 50 years has tilted the playing field toward those who own capital and away from those who work for a living. And let's not forget the racial component here, because this system isn't just about class, it's about race too. White households control 84% of all wealth in America, despite being only 66% of the population. That's not an accident. Policies like redlining, discriminatory lending, and systemic exclusion from home ownership programs meant that entire generations of Black and brown families were locked out, and the effects compound over time. Wealth isn't just about what you earn, it's about what you inherit. And if your parents and grandparents were systematically prevented from accumulating assets, you start from zero, while others start from millions. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't this just how capitalism works? Don't the rich deserve their wealth because they took risks and built businesses? And look, I'm not saying all wealth is illegitimate, but here's the thing. More and more of the wealth at the top isn't coming from innovation or risk-taking. It's coming from rent-seeking, from owning things and extracting value without producing anything new. When a billionaire buys up housing and raises rents, they're not creating value, they're extracting it. When private equity firms load companies with debt, fire workers, and cash out, they're not building, they're looting. This isn't productive capitalism, it's extraction, and the system is designed to protect this arrangement. The tax code rewards capital gains over wages. Inheritance taxes have been gutted. Loopholes let billionaires pay lower effective tax rates than teachers and nurses. Politicians funded by wealthy donors write laws that benefit their backers. It's not corruption in the traditional sense. It's just how the game is played now. Money buys influence. Influence writes the rules. The rules protect the money. And around we go. But here's the part most people miss. This extraction doesn't just hurt your bank account. It limits your freedom. When you're spending half your income on rent, you can't start a business. When you're drowning in student debt, you can't take risks. When every dollar is spoken for before it even hits your account, you can't save, you can't invest, you can't build. You're trapped in a cycle where your labor enriches someone else while you run harder and harder just to stay in place. That's not opportunity, that's a treadmill. And it's accelerating. Wealth concentration is speeding up, not slowing down. Oxfam predicts we'll see at least 5 trillionaires within the next decade, 5 people with $1 trillion each, while billions struggle to afford rent and groceries. Think about that. One person will have more wealth than the entire GDP of most countries. And where does that wealth come from? It comes from the same place it's always come from the people who work, who rent, who borrow, who buy, from you. So what do we do about it? That's the question, right? And honestly, there's no easy answer. Some people say tax the rich. Others say regulate corporations. Some want to break up monopolies or strengthen unions. And all of those might help. But the deeper issue is that the entire system is built around this model of wealth extraction. Changing it would require rethinking everything from how we value labor to how we structure ownership, to what we actually mean when we talk about a fair economy. What I do know is this: awareness is the first step. Once you see the game, once you understand where your money is really going, you start making different choices. You start asking different questions. You stop blaming yourself for not getting ahead and start recognizing the structural forces working against you. And maybe, just maybe, that awareness starts to spread. Because the system only works as long as we believe it's a natural, inevitable, fair. The moment enough people realize it's not, that's when things can change. Look, I'm not here to tell you there's some magic solution. or that you can personally opt out of this system by being smarter or working harder. The game is rigged, but that doesn't mean you're powerless. It means you need to see the board clearly, and now you do. $2,847 a month. That's what the average household is quietly handing over to the ultra-rich through rent, interest, fees, and 1,000 invisible extractions. And that number is only going up. If this video opened your eyes, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because I'm going to keep breaking down exactly how money and power actually work. In this country, the system doesn't want you asking these questions. That's exactly why we need to keep asking them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.